Thanks, Jared. I know Ray prayed, but I'm going to open us up in prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, I pray that you just give us wisdom and understanding in how to be better stewards of the ground that you've given us. And God, I just pray that you would just give us a heart to desire you in everything we do. In Jesus' wonderful name, amen. All right, so I really loved Ray's talk. Like, it got me really excited, and I want to encourage you guys to wake up every single day excited, because we live in the greatest time in the history of the world to be farming. I know we're in a colossal drought across most of the Midwest, but it's still the greatest time in the history of mankind to farm, because we have more knowledge and more technology to be able to farm better. We have been given better tools than our predecessors, and we have more understanding of the biology that's taking place in our soils. And so being able to manage that biology and being able to understand it is going to be the key going forward in the future. And so to me, like, it's a really, really exciting time. And I'm going to give you guys the tools today to save $50 to $100 an acre on input cost. How many of you guys are excited about saving a lot of money on input cost? All right, so let's enter this with excitement. Before I talk about me and where we're at, I want to talk to you guys about the most important thing for you as farmers going forward, about what you need to do that's going to give you the most success. You need to be acquiring wisdom. One of my favorite proverbs is, the beginning of wisdom is acquiring wisdom, and with all of your acquiring, get understanding. So if you're going to be someone who's successful at farming, you need to be acquiring wisdom. How great would it be if Apple never did anything to improve their technology? Would it be good if we still only had the old Apple computers from the 80s? Why are so many farmers farming with the same technology and the same techniques that they did in the 80s? We need to improve our knowledge and our understanding of what we're doing so that we can be more efficient at what we do. These are four of my favorite scientists. So Dr. Christina Jones, she has several amazing webinars that she did with Green Cover Seed. So if you guys want to see those, just search Green Cover Seed and Christina Jones. Dr. James White has done some amazing things with what they've discovered about, there's bacteria endophytes and there's fungal endophytes, and those endophytes actually penetrate into the seed and rewire the coating in the seed. And so when we are able to get those endophytes into our seed, then we're able to raise healthier crops, and then FOS destroys that. And so being able to know those two things is huge. And if we don't study these scientists, we're not going to have it. Dr. David Johnson and his wife, Wei Chin Su Johnson, are the ones that came up with the bioreactor that we're going to talk about today, the Johnson Su Bioreactor. And I just found Dr. Toby Kiers this summer. Her research out of Amsterdam is amazing. Through her research, they've actually discovered that fungus can tell which plants in a system are giving them more carbon. So when Ray Archuleta was talking about those exudates that are secreted by the plant, that's giving the plant carbon. Fungus has the ability to discern which plants are giving it more carbon, and they will bring those plants more micronutrients, and she's found that through her research. So we need to be people who are acquiring wisdom, and if we don't acquire wisdom and we don't put the effort out to understand these things that are taking place in our soils, then we're going to screw something up, and we're going to blame soil health for our failed mistakes because we didn't put the effort out to totally understanding what we're doing. So I want to encourage you guys going forward, take a screenshot of this. I'm going to show it later at the end of it because I want to remind you guys to acquire wisdom. But go up in YouTube and make sure that you find these scientists and find what they're doing. If you search James White, make sure you put Dr. James White, Rutgers University. Otherwise, you'll get the football player James White. So I got double-clicked it there. Where we were. In 2015, I had no knowledge of what a cover crop was. All right, we had no cows. We ran stalkers in the winter, and we had a fallow rotation of fallow wheat corn or fallow wheat milo. And Dad was, in 2015, Dad was starting to transition out of no-till because of the input costs were so high on chemicals. I was still clinging on to the hope that I could figure out a way to keep going with no-till. And so anyway, in 2016, I went to a friend's house to play cards and to hang out, and my friend my friend's daughter was talking about what she was learning at college, and she mentioned cover crops. And I said, what's a cover crop? And the dad was like offended. He's like, Jay Young, how do you not know what a cover crop is? I'm like, I don't know. And so he took me into his office and sat me down, and we watched an hour-long video called Grazing Cattle on Cover Crops. I went to his house on a Saturday to hang out and have fun, not to watch about a farmer doing something in North Dakota. And 15 minutes into this video, I was hooked, because I've always loved cattle more than farming. And I'm like, hey, I'm going to raise a cow-calf operation on only cover crops, and this is going to be great. I knew my dad was going to think that I was crazy, and so I studied for a whole month, watching YouTube videos every single night, and I thought, you know what? I know everything I need to know after a month of studying. I'm going to present this to my dad. So I come to my dad and I'm like, hey Dad, we're going to raise our cow-calf operation on cover crops. If you're in, great. If you're not, I'm going to do it on the stuff I'm renting. He's like, oh, what a crop? And I'm like, a cover crop. It's going to be great. We're going to have cows year round. He's like, okay. You can do that on your stuff that you're renting. I'm gonna see how that goes for you. Because he knew it was going to blow up my face and it wouldn't work, and you don't change tried and true methods, and I was going to learn. So in a year from then, it was so successful that I ended up selling half of Young Red Angus to my dad. Now it's Young Red Angus LLC. So that's where we were. We now rotate over 3,000 acres of our ground on cover crops. All of our ground is getting this compost extract that I'm going to talk about. We've converted almost all of our acres to no-till. It's really hard for my dad to give it up completely because he loves wheat, and it's been a challenge to figure out how to keep wheat in our systems, because in our environment, I don't know how you grow effective wheat without a long fallow period. My biggest vision going forward is we need to find a way to interseed cover crops into wheat. Or not wheat. We're going to do it with wheat, but we need to figure out a way to interseed cover crops in milo, in corn, even our dryland, because I believe you need those multi-species cover crops sharing micronutrients with the other plants. So that's kind of the stuff I want to do going forward. We have 150 cows, and then we have a bull sale every March. I sell bulls in our town of Trivium. So that's kind of where we're at, and I have a YouTube channel, so any of this stuff that you want to go back over and see more information on, I get more into detail on all of our YouTube videos. So I do love cattle the most. Today what we're talking about is what Dr. David Johnson calls the BEAM approach. The BEAM approach stands for Biologically Enhanced Application Method. And so it's this process of making this compost, turning it into an extract, and applying it on your ground. So we're going to talk about the what is it, how does it actually work scientifically, and then the why you want to be transitioning into this and applying these methods into your operation. So the Johnson Su Bioreactor, I heard about it in February of 2020, and in his presentation, Dr. Johnson talked about everything I'm going to talk to you about, and he pointed out that they are able in these systems to reduce nitrogen by 85%. So whatever you are applying nitrogen at, if you continually do these processes, you can pull back to 15% of what you are applying on nitrogen, and you can eliminate phos. Not only can you eliminate phos, you do not want phos. You do not want it in your ground. You don't need it in your ground. So when I heard that, I thought two things. A, he's absolutely crazy. There's no way that's true. And B, I'm all in. Because on the off chance that this man and what he is saying is not crazy, this changes everything. It changes our farming operation, and it's going to change the world. And I'm not going to be the moron who sits there and listens to a scientist tell me something and go, I'm not going to try that. So I thought, you know what, I'm all in. Either way, it's not going to work, and I'll be able to be like, hey, that guy's crazy. Or it's going to work, and I'm going to save thousands of dollars, and I'm going to help other people save thousands of dollars every year. So that was my thought process in the getting into the Johnson Su Bioreactor. So if you look at this photo, my friend John Neiswanger, this is he applied compost extract in furrow with his cover crops, and then this is the results of some of our wheat seed being treated with the Johnson Su extract. So what it's doing, what I talked about with Dr. James White, is those endophytes, when you treat the seed, are penetrating into the seed and having a response where those exudates shoot out immediately. So one thing that's important when you guys think of compost, most people think of your composting manure. Okay, you need to get that completely out of your head. Compost manure and this kind of compost, completely different things. This is a fungally dominant compost that you make, and if you come to my presentation later, that I have a bioreactor and I explain how to build these, but it's basically, picture a chemical tote, take the bladder out of that chemical tote, line it with weed barrier mat, and then you have a bottom that has holes perforated in the bottom of it, and then you fill that with a carbon source and some green sources or manure. You want to be higher on the carbon when you build these, but basically you wet it down, 70% moisture, you throw it in this, you make sure you have air pipes going through there so the air goes through it, and that's why it stays fungally dominant, because it never goes anaerobic. Aerobic means with oxygen, anaerobic means without oxygen. When you go to a swamp area or an area where water's been stagnant and it stinks, that's anaerobic because it's not getting oxygen and it smells and it has bacteria that flourish in those environments. With oxygen allows the fungus to flourish in these environments, and so you get a fungally dominant compost. If you were in Roy's talk, he mentioned that earlier today, that we have bacteria dominant soils because of tillage. So when we have a lot of tillage, we're creating these bacteria dominant environments. We want to get our bacteria ratios and fungus ratios back in order with what it was before. So that's basically how you make this. My best looking one right now has 60% corn stalks, 20% grass clippings, 10% horse manure, and 10% wood chips. So this is me. This is crazy to me. This is my son. This is in 2020. My son's 6 feet tall now. This kills me every time I see this photo. It's like, that wasn't that long ago. How is he now a giant? But anyway, this is us making the first ones together. So you got the shell, you line it with weed barrier mat, you put the PVC pipes in there. And again, I cover out how to build all these things and what mistakes to avoid. This is what we're doing now. We're cutting them into sections so that you can take them apart as the compost breaks down. And then you want to make sure you get holes in the bottom of it so the oxygen can flow through the bottom. And this is what it was in April when we filled it. That's how much it's broken down now from April. And this is the corn stalk one I was talking about of those mixes. That's the finished product, or not. That's not even finished. That's just how much it's broken down. Is this? And you guys can pass this around. This stuff is finished product, but even that stuff that's not quite as old pretty much looks like this. I love the smell of that. It smells like potting soil. So cool. But to be able to go from this to that, like, man, that kind of stuff just excites me. Because I know the life that is in there, and we're going to talk about that. So we come to 2021. The compost is a year old. We're all excited about applying it, me and my dad. We get our recommendation back from our agronomist, and our agronomist is like, you need to apply 180 pounds of nitrogen and 40 pounds of phos to get your 200 plus bushel corn yields that you desire. And I said, Dad, that's crazy, because we applied compost manure in 2019. This is 2 years later. We should be getting the most benefit from that compost manure. So something's not right. Why is it saying that we need that much phos? So real quick interruption here in the presentation. I'm drilling wheat right now, and I'm editing this video for you to watch. And as I'm watching that, it seems like I'm coming down pretty hard on my agronomist, and I'm not. I love our agronomist, and he was going off of what the soil test said. So after watching that, I felt bad because it sounded like I was banging on our agronomist, and I'm not. Like, he just sent out the soil samples, got back the test results. That's what the test said, is we needed 180 pounds of nitrogen, 40 pounds of phos, so that's what he recommended. So great agronomist, love the guy, and not saying anything negative about him. So something's not right. Why is it saying that we need that much phos? So let's not do any phos. And David Johnson, hey, he said, you know, the best results are 15 pounds of nitrogen. Now let's drop it down to, you know, let's say 50 pounds of nitrogen. He said, you're crazy. I'm not reducing the amount of nitrogen at all. And so I said, well, at least give me these test strips. So he gave me 2 test strips to do in the field. Test strip A was 180 pounds of urea and 40 pounds of mez with no extract. All right. Test strip B, no nitrogen, no phos, 8 gallons of compost extract in furrow. And test strip C, 90 pounds of nitrogen, no phos, and 8 gallons of compost extract in our ground. So when we did this, the rest of everything else, he agreed on the phos. So we didn't do any phos on any of our ground on fall crops last year. And we didn't reduce the nitrogen at all. So no phos, and then the rest of this field, the rest of our irrigated circles got 180 pounds of nitrogen. Now this is the telltale sign. So look, which one above ground growth was better? This one right here. This corn is way bigger than that corn, right? What's happening with the roots though? These roots are going nuts because of the compost extract. It doesn't have the nitrogen to make the shoot up like this is having, but we're turning, like, look at the difference in this color soil. This isn't putting out any exudates. If it's not putting out any exudates, we are not building soil. So we are not building any soil by applying the excess nitrogen and excess phos. Over here, we're building soil. What we're doing is we're turning our crops into meth heads. They got a ton of energy to do stuff, but they're ridiculously unhealthy. And we have to realize this, that we can't farm the way we've been farming. I love this picture. All right, here you go, guys, go. This is test strip A and test strip B. One of them has 180 pounds of nitrogen, 40 pounds of phos. One of them has no nitrogen and no phosphorus. You tell me which one. Which one has the nitrogen, which one has the phos? And nitrogen, phos, which one has the... So wait, this one has nitrogen and phos. Okay, this one has compost extract. So what are you guys voting? Which one? Point to the way you think that has 180 pounds of nitrogen. If you guys can look around the room, none of you guys are agreeing on anything. This has no nitrogen and no phos. This has 180 pounds of nitrogen, 40 pounds of phos. I was super excited that in our first year we were able to see this big of a difference. So here's the actual results. So on test strip A, we raised 238 bushels an acre of corn on the nitrogen and phos. We raised 200 bushels an acre with the only compost extract. So at last year's prices, this was still more profitable. I think it was about 20 bucks an acre more profitable to do the full rate than to do nothing. But where we cut back to half and did no phos, we raised 4 bushels an acre more per acre by half the nitrogen and no phosphorus added. By my math last year, that was a savings of $120 an acre last year. If you guys, like, how many you guys do irrigated? Okay. If you saved $120 an acre in input cost, how much would that save you? How much? A lot. It's more than your actual income now to be able to save that much money. I'm not, just so people aren't saying, Jay Young, you're crazy and you're making this stuff up. This is my buddy Clint Freeze. Him and Luke Host, and then his brother started a company called Bioag Management. And so Clint and Luke did this test plot. So I don't know if you can see this here. This is 200 pounds of nitrogen, no compost, and all of these have no phos, okay? So 200 pounds of nitrogen, 150 pounds of nitrogen, 100 pounds of nitrogen, 50 pounds of nitrogen, no nitrogen. This did not get compost extract. The rest of these got compost extract. And I'm pretty sure he put it down about the same rate that we put it down. So here you raised 263 bushels an acre, so better than that. 100 pounds was 237, but 50 pounds was actually better than 100 pounds, and it was 257. So the best yield per acre was 263, but the most profitability was only 50 pounds of nitrogen. 50 pounds of nitrogen, they raised 257 bushel corn. He's saving a ton of money. He's not even using the same composting system. He outsources his compost and buys 4 different types of compost and then mixes them together and they make their system. And now they've been doing it long enough that they started adding wood chips to their spent compost. So after they make the extract, they take the leftover compost, mix it with wood chips, and now they're not even buying any more compost. It's all turnkey. Tell me when you're done and I'll go to the next one. All right, perfect. So that is what it is, and we'll get into more detail about how to make it in my other session, or if you can't make it to the other session, I've got plenty of YouTube videos on it. Now we're getting to how. How is this possible that we're able to do that? I think we all need to realize that we have way more micronutrients. We have more nitrogen, phos, manganese, copper than we could ever imagine in our soils, okay? And we make it impossible to harvest those micronutrients with traditional farming. We do not have the ability to even harvest what's there with our current practices, okay? So we have to change our practices to be able to harvest it, and we have to be thinking on the soil health level about what are the soil health principles, and we have to be thinking about how we can work with, like what Ray Archuleta was saying, how we can be working with what God intended in the very beginning. So a simplistic breakdown of this first, and then we'll get into the deeper part of the science. This is a total nutrition digestion analysis test. Report, not test. But anyway, got this from, you guys can read, I can't speak. I got this from Regen Labs. So Lance Gungerson, I don't know if you guys know him, he owns Regen Labs. We sent off a soil sample of our fields this year. Every single irrigated circle that we sent off, all of them had between 3,000 pounds of nitrogen and 3,700 pounds of nitrogen. So this is so all of them were between, why am I not even be able to say simple math that's right in front of me? 33, that's 33? Oh, I'm on carbon, that's why I'm screwing up. This is the nitrogen, that's what was throwing me off. So we have between 3,300 and 3,700. Let's get on the right line, Jay. So this is why we're able to do it. We have 3,336 pounds of inorganic nitrogen just sitting in our soil. The value of 3,300 pounds of inorganic nitrogen is 7,200 pounds of urea applied to your field, or 46.0. That's urea, right? All right, 7,200 pounds. Okay, if we're applying it at 200 pounds an acre, do you know how many years that is? I've got 34 years of nitrogen stockpiled in my field. The phos is even better. It's 1,200. That's 5,200 pounds of phos. If I'm only applying 40 pounds of phos each year, that's 130 years of phosphorus stored up in my field. Why would I ever apply it? It's already there. And it's not just those, it's all these micronutrients except for maybe boron, poor old boron. There's not very much of you in there. But all the rest of them, there are so many of those micronutrients just sitting in our field. But that's the problem with inorganic nitrogen. Can the plant uptake inorganic nitrogen? No, it cannot. If you're plowing your ground and killing the biology that makes that inorganic nitrogen plant available, you cannot harvest the inorganic nitrogen that's in your field. Phosphorus gets tied up with what in our soils? We have high pH soils, so it gets tied up with what? You know, Dustin, say it. Say it. Calcium. Okay? So phosphorus and calcium are tied up together, and so you can't even access the phosphorus that's there because it's tied up. No, can't get me. The roots can't access the phosphorus that's in our soil. So we have to be able to give the plant the tools it needs to access those micronutrients. And this is how we do it. We have access to that through the biology that Jesus there. We sent off a soil sample of this compost, or not soil sample, a DNA sample of this compost to Biomakers. So Biomakers is a company that will do a DNA analysis. When we sent off the DNA analysis, in the good sample, we had 370 species, that's wrong, 670 species of bacteria and fungus. It was like 305 were bacteria, so almost 1-to-1. In my compost that went bad, it went anaerobic and then I fixed it, it had around 300 and some species and only 40 species of fungus. That stuff that was bad and only had 40 species of fungus is what we raised the 200 bushel corn on. So I didn't even have the full amount of tools or weapons in my arsenal to be able to access all of it, and we still raised the 200 bushel corn. That was with the compost that wasn't that great. With this compost that is good, that had 670 different species, 83% of those species make inorganic nitrogen plant available. So this right here this is good, it never went bad. This has over 600 species of fungus and bacteria. 83% of them make inorganic nitrogen plant available. The nitrogen that you all have sitting in your fields that is not available to your plant, this stuff right here makes it available to your plant. That's how this stuff works. That's why it works. So here we are with nitrogen. That's where the DNA test that we did. This is where it shows inorganic nitrogen release, 83%. We're going to get over here to phosphorus. Inorganic phosphorus solubilization. So these bacteria and these fungus make it to where the phosphorus is no longer tied up with your calcium and you can use it. Potassium, 49%. Calcium, 65% of them make that calcium available to the plant. Does corn like calcium? Yes, it does. It's cool that Ray said that about renewing, and he said the ancient book Colossians. I'm actually bringing that up, getting rid of the old self. Put aside the old self with its former practices and put on a new self who is being renewed. It's so cool that Ray quoted that verse, and I had planned to quote that verse in that. You know what that's called, guys? That's called double confirmation. Right? So look, we have to get rid of the old mindset. We have to get rid of the old way of thinking. We got to get rid of the old way of farming. And it's tough because all of our lives we've seen our loved ones who work their butt off, who have great character, farm this way. And when somebody tells us this old way is wrong, we get, why would you tell me my granddad was wrong? Why would you tell me the people that I love so much are wrong? They didn't have all the tools you have. You have more information. You have better information. What they were doing wasn't wrong. They were doing the best with the tools that they've been given. You've been given new tools. You've been given new information, and your eyes have been opened to the fact that there's thousands upon thousands of species of biology in your soil that you never even knew about. Did you know that 60% of the species in the world live underneath your feet? And I think that's even wrong. I think it's higher than that. You're going to have to Google that one. The point is you have to destroy that. You can no longer think that tillage is okay. You can't think that a long fallow period is okay. And you got to stop using, you have to reduce nitrogen and you have to eliminate phos, okay? Listen, you're going to have to do all these things in time, and you're going to have to figure out how to make it work in your system. We still tilled 3/4 of ground this summer. So I'm by no means telling you stop everything you're doing right now, but you for sure need to pick 1/4 and say, I'm not doing it anymore on this ground, and I'm going to figure it out. When we went through this process and I started learning about cover crops, I knew nothing about what I'm talking to you guys about today with biology. I jumped on this train because I could raise cows, right? That's all I cared about, is raising cows year long. And I sat in on Christina Jones giving a presentation, and she said, if you don't quit using phos, you'll never get where you want to go because phos hinders root exudates. And I'm like, oh yeah, that word exudate, I still don't know what that means. Right? And I'm going to these conferences and I just want to learn about grazing, what cover crops to plant, and I don't even really know about all the science, and I'm like, none of it matters if I don't quit phos. How do I ever quit using phos? And I every time they say exudate and aggregates, I'm like, I don't know what the crap you're talking about, I don't care. Because I just assumed I'm never going to know as much as these people know. I'm never going to know what this person knows. I'm not as smart as them. I have dyslexia. I have all my excuses for why I can't learn and be as smart as you. And you have to destroy that mindset. You can't give yourself any more excuses about what you don't know and why you don't know it. You don't have to be one of these scientists I mentioned. You don't have to be me. You have to be the best version of you. And the best version of you is not full of excuses. The best version of you works your butt off and figures out what you need to know to be the best farmer in your location doing what you're doing. And you have to do that. You can't be your old self. You have to be a new self. So now we're going to get into the depth of the science of it and why we need these aggregates, why we need to be seeing that in our soil. This right here is fungal hyphae. Can you guys tell what plant it is with the close-up? What is that? Say it. Pigweed. What is the pig? We hate this, right? It's the enemy. It's the devil. What is that right there? That's fungal hyphae. So what is your pigweed doing? It's secreting exudates. It's having a relationship with the fungus. It's taking those fungus, and what is it doing with your corn? Hey corn, I've got these micronutrients that you can't access because I'm more talented than you in this area, and I'm going to share that with you. Your pigweeds are sharing micronutrients with your corn if you're in a healthy system. So Dad still hates them, like with a vigorous hatred. I hate them a little less. So this is what Dr. Christina Jones calls the nitrogen cycle, fungal energy, and I can't even say that right, but basically the way that the nitrogen cycles, and it cycles through the energy that the fungus creates, okay? And when we have a healthy system, our root puts out those exudates that you saw Ray Archuleta talking about. In this next slide, now another thing about rhizosphere. You want to see a healthy rhizosphere on your plants, and you want to see these exudates being secreted. You won't see that, but that's what's happening. You want your plant to be secreting these exudates in your system. And when your plant is secreting these went too far back. When your plant is secreting these exudates, it creates aggregates. Okay, so you think about the secretion, it's putting out a glue. You saw the little glue on those roots? Those glues bind soil particles together. When soil particles are bound together, it's what Ray talked about, that actually creates soil, and it creates filtration in our ground. So it does so many things. It's creating filtration, it's building topsoil. You can't build topsoil without it. And it's doing another thing. It's allowing your plants, these exudates are sending out signals. And when they send out signals, it's like telephone or communicating with the mycorrhizal fungus and bacteria. Hey, I'm in a healthy system. Bring me the micronutrients I need so I don't die, and I'll feed you so you don't die. Right? They're sending out signals into the soil, and they're attracting mycorrhizal fungus. This is why cover crops work. Because in a system, corn specializes in harvesting a certain micronutrient, right? I don't know what corn does. I'm not even sure if the scientists know what corn specializes in. But we know that flax specializes in creating mycorrhizal fungus and supporting mycorrhizal fungus life. We know that brassicas tap down and sunflowers tap down into the soil further than the other plants, and it brings micronutrients up that the corn can't get, and it shares it with the plants around them. Every single plant has a different specialty that they share with other plants. But corn will not share corn with other corn because it's a threat. It's the same species. It has no benefit. They do the same thing, so it won't even share. So if you have a monoculture of one crop, they're not going to share micronutrients with the other plants. So we want a healthy system where these crops are working together and sharing micronutrients together, and that your plants are able to harvest the stuff that's there naturally and grow a healthy crop. And if we have this, if we're just putting down phos and we're putting down nitrogen, what micronutrients does the plant have? Only the ones that you placed out there. But my plants have every single one of those micronutrients because I put out all of the bacteria and fungus out there. So because my plant has more access to more micronutrients than your plant, whose crop is healthier, mine or yours? Mine. And not only is it more healthier, it's more healthy to the consumer, because what does it do with those micronutrients? It puts it in the fruit, it puts it in the grain, it puts it in the vegetable. And so now our plants can be more nutrient dense because we're adding these to our system. How many of you guys not only want to be profitable, but you also want to be producing a healthier crop for the people around you? That's what I want. That's a healthy rhizosphere. Again, those are the exudates we talked about. How am I pushing that every time? All right, so this is something I want to just cover briefly. These are saprophytic funguses, okay? And there's a difference between mycorrhizal fungus and saprophytic funguses. What kind of fungus is in the Johnson Su bioreactor? What's that? No. So like saprophytic fungus breaks down dead plant material, okay? Mycorrhizal fungus has to have roots to survive. So the bioreactors, when we're putting out there, this is saprophytic fungus, and these saprophytic funguses aren't interconnected with all the plants. If picture this as one field, this room is one field. If you have a healthy mycorrhizal system, every single plant in this room would be connected by mycorrhizal fungus. It's one of the largest living organisms in the world. Saprophytic funguses break down the stuff that's within their environment, but these saprophytic funguses are harvesting micronutrients, and if you get a healthy system with the mycorrhizal fungus, they can be taking that throughout the entire field. We're not even accessing the full health of what we have because we're at the beginning stages of building back up the mycorrhizal fungus in our fields. This is 1 year only utilizing saprophytic funguses. it blows my mind to think how amazing it'll be when we actually get the mycorrhizal fungus growing in our fields. Like, what possibilities do we have that we're not even aware of if we can get that close to the actual yield of synthetic nitrogen in the first year with only like half the tools? And I encourage you guys, go out and dig up all your plants. If you dig up those roots, it's going to start teaching you what you need to know. And when I first started doing it, I'd pull it up and I'm like, okay, great, I don't know what the crap I'm looking at. And it's okay. It's okay to be like, go through stuff and be like, I don't know what ag, like, you know, Ray's talking in there. He's like, oh, you want to see these crumblies? You want to see the cottage cheese? And you're like, I don't know what I'm looking for. I don't really see it. And is it not there, or am I just ignorant of what it looks like? You know, it's okay to be on the stages of growing and learning, and it's frustrated, but you got to remind yourself you're on a journey, and this journey is going to take you time. So I already kind of covered all of that about the plants sharing micronutrients. What I talked about with cover crops, this is a picture of why this works. This is a multi-species cover crops that has twice as many plants in it per acre than this cornfield. Okay, this is 2019. The corn is burning up, the cover crop is thriving, but there's more plants per acre, and these are a mile apart. These are both dry land. Why is this taking place? Because plants are more hardy and stronger and have more micronutrients when they're sharing it in together, and they can handle the drought better when you have a multi-species cover crop. That's why I said I believe we have to start to crack the code with what cover crops we can plant with our cash crops that will keep them drought tolerant and keep them lasting through the growing season longer, so we can handle these droughts. And we're not going to ever get there if we're like, that'll never work. You can't interseed cover crops in your cash crop. Look, you see corn, you see the tassel here? Which corn's healthier? There's corn right here. Which corn's green? This one's healthy. If I wouldn't have had hybrid pearl millet out there, I probably could have harvested corn out there. So why can't I find a cover crop to grow with my corn that will stay this low, that will keep my corn healthy? Why can't we do that? We just don't have the guts to even try it, but we need to start stepping out and having test plots to figure out what we can do with cover crops, with our cash crops, to make them more healthy. Let's get to the problem with traditional farming. Ray talked about this, so I'm just going to go over it. Tillage kills fungi. You can't keep your fungus alive. You can't keep your earthworms alive if you're tilling. Okay, so tillage also causes the loss of topsoil, and you can't even build topsoil with tillage. What time is it right now? 12:43. Oh, great! I got 20 minutes. I can slow down. Perfect. This is our major wind event. How many of you guys remember December 16th, 1921, the day that will go down in infamy for all of us? God, that day was terrible. Look, I'm showing this right here. This is our damage right there to our barn. Tyson, is this pretty pathetic, me complaining about this little damage? What all did you guys lose? Yeah, did any of you guys lose more than this? Yeah, you're all shaking your head. You're like, you're a baby, Jay. This is my neighbor's, that's actual farm ground right there. This isn't like our yard. This is actually where we raised our 200 bushel corn. You guys want to cry with me? I want to cry. That's my neighbor's corn stalks in my driveway. This is a picture from our county. Do you guys recognize this? Anybody recognize this? 200 bushel corn, no nitrogen. 180 pounds of nitrogen. I wanted to throw up when I saw that after the wind event. I'm like, oh, good thing we did all that stuff to build the biology. I posted this on social media in a Facebook group. I'm like, guys, it's tough out there sometimes. Keep going. Some person in eastern Kansas is like, where's your biology? Where's your living root in the ground all times? If you were following the soil health principles all the time, that wouldn't have happened to you. It's like, hey, it's a good thing we're on social media and not face to face, isn't it? But when we're in this environment, you know, where these things are going to happen, my neighbor's field started blowing, and where we had parked the trucks started blowing because that residue was loose. And then when you have a huge wind event that goes, you know, you can't control what stupid people on social media say. They don't know our environment, they don't know our context, and it's okay. You don't have to be upset what an ignorant person says. And you don't even need to joke about, you know, maybe punching him in the face if you actually saw him. So long fallow period and no-till is still no good. So even if you're doing no-till, Ray talked about this as well, mycorrhizal fungus, if we're ever going to attempt to build it, it won't survive very long without living roots in the ground. So we chemical fallow and we spray that, we're killing it. And that's why, to me, it's really hard for us in our environment. I don't know a lot of guys that are growing wheat on wheat or wheat behind corn very successfully. And so one thing that we tried this year is we raised I wish I'd have put the pictures in my presentation, but we raised YouTube. I made a YouTube video about it on Sunday. But anyway, we raised corn in a cover crop with just corn, hemp, sunflowers, and buckwheat and daikon radishes, because I knew if I took my crop roller out there, I could kill all of it except for the daikon radish. And the ones that stood out of the ground quite a ways, we could break those daikon radishes and kill those. And I knew I wouldn't kill the weeds out there like kochia, but I was like, hey, put a lot of that on the ground, it's going to die. I didn't even kill all the corn. Like, a lot of it was like pop back up, and it's like, why'd you do that? You know? So we killed a lot of the species, but a lot of them popped back up, so I'm going to have to spray it, you know, to kill it. But we got those laying on the ground. We got a good canopy on the ground. We got a good rain after that. Our ground's going to bake out less quickly than our neighbors that are been tilling it. And I really think we got a shot at planting milo into that field. We'll see how it goes. But we have to be thinking outside the box in farming out here, because we can't keep doing it the way we've been doing it. The problem with nitrogen and phos, when you have too much nitrogen, it has the same effect as phos. Okay, phos, the problem with phos is when you put it out in your field, 80 to 85% gets tied up immediately with calcium. How many of you guys like putting an investment down and immediately you lose 85% of your return on your investment by putting it out there? To me, that's a bad investment. Not only is it a bad investment, like I said earlier with the roots, when you put it in the ground and it senses mez, it's like, oh, I'll take that mez immediately, and I'll take that phos, and I'll work at building above ground growth. And I'm not going to put out any exudates. It really is like we're creating crackheads, because it's not even doing anything other than taking up the stuff that's there and not even doing any kind of a proper function. And like I said earlier, if you don't have root exudates, then you don't have aggregates. If you don't have aggregates, you have no way of building soil. You can't do it. When we have a major wind event like we had in December, what happened to our topsoil? It's gone. Do you guys think that topsoil is something that will never end and we'll have it forever? No, it's not. We're going to lose topsoil. I talk to farmers about that in my community. I don't know how that's something that's hard for them to grasp. You know, and they'll tell me, Jay, I don't know that cover crops will work in our area. I'm like, that's okay, because I know for a fact tillage will never work. Eventually your grandkids will want to farm, and they'll put a seed into the ground, and there will be no topsoil, and there will be no plant that grows. And we're creating our own deserts like Ray showed. Why would we cling to this old mindset that we know is eventually going to make it to where we can't do anything? We have to change. There's no going around it. There can't be this old life that continues on. I love this picture because this was a little test that I did, and I put a seed into what do you call those little pots that you grow your plants in before you put them in your garden? Yeah, I did one of those. Thanks. I didn't even know what you said, but that's what it was. So we put mez in there and set it down, and we treated the seed with compost extract. Just like all the scientists tell you, no exudates. Exudates. Building soil, no soil being built. And we're not ever going to get anywhere if we keep applying mez. So I'm encouraging you guys, you can quit mez right now. It's worthless. Especially if you're doing no-till and you're adding cover crops. You don't need it. Stop applying it. It's the quickest way to get to soil health. Cut off mez altogether. If you want to do nitrogen and back off of nitrogen, slowly do it. But ultimately, the biggest thing we need to do is we need to be getting these composters in. Our environment is so dry, and it is so hard to build organic matter. You guys ever hear about guys in eastern Kansas I've been doing cover crops for 3 years and we build our organic matter, and it's like, I don't have organic matter that high in our best fields. And you just stopped in 3 years and were able to build it like that much in 3 years? That's insane. Roy's been at it, they've been no-tilling for 40 years. And he's had diverse rotations, and his best field is 3% organic matter. I don't have 3% organic matter. We can't build biology that fast because we don't have the critical factor in building organic matter, and that's water. Okay? When we have long dry periods and droughts like we've had, we go backwards because we're killing that biology because the roots can't even survive. So we have to be adding, in my opinion, we have to be adding the biology and getting it in there with these extractors, because the plant will be able to discern what biology is there, and the plant will feed the ones that it needs to feed, and it won't feed the ones it doesn't. And then you don't have to worry about it. You put the biology out there and you let the plant decide what it needs to grow. So I really encourage you guys, if you want to learn how to build these extractors, come to my next presentation. If you want to see somebody else watch a YouTube video, that's totally fine. This is how we're getting it on our fields. I bought that from Bio 5. We make this extract, and it's 1 pound for 4 gallons of water to make the extract, and then we put it in furrow with corn and milo, and then we treat our cover crop seed and we treat the corn seed. That's our interseeded cover crop. That's what I was talking about that we need to do more of. You want to go back? Oh, you don't want to go back, that's fine. I want to close with the most important thing that I'm going to tell you today, okay? And it comes from Psalms 24. Psalms 24 is one of my favorite Psalms, but it says, "The earth is the Lord's and all it contains, the world and those who dwell in it. For he has founded it upon the seas and established it upon the rivers." When you think of this world that we get to live in, God created all of it. I just came back from the mountains. Those mountains are so beautiful. I love the mountains, but what I love the most is the prairies, and I love farming, and I love the life that I get to create. And God has allowed me to be a steward of this life. And the thing that it just brings me to tears is to think about the life that I never knew about it until the last 5 years of my life. The life that's growing within our soils. All the species of bacteria and fungus I mentioned earlier is taking place in our soils. And Colossians says, He is before all things, and in Him all things hold together. His Spirit holds everything within our soils and everything in our environment and our atmosphere together. And to me, that's the most beautiful thing ever. And yet His Word says that He delights in me and He delights in you more than anything that He created. Can you think about the beauty you get to see every single day? And God looks at you and He says, "You're the most beautiful thing that I created, and I love you more than anything I created." And He loves you so much that He died so He could spend eternity with you. Like, I can tell you all this stuff about the soil and how great the soil is, but there's nothing greater than a God who creates and that loves unconditionally, that would die for us. So I encourage you guys every single day, wake up and be thankful that you get to be a steward of what He created, and be even more thankful that He loves you more conditionally than anything He ever created. Thank you guys for coming to my presentation, and I'm going to do the next slide, which has all my contact information. I'm going to take questions. But if you're hungry and you want to beat all the other chumps to food, by all means, beat them to food.